connect with employers, and that whole workforce connection, and in some areas has been problematic. Some people have figured it out. Some people have good contacts with employers. Others do not. And so Dr. Christine Bosworth will be joining us today along with Selena Sand, and we'll be going over those critical key components to talking to employers, to having that good network, and just seeing the business perspective, which you might not be thinking about as an educator. And so we've got a couple of good experts here to walk us through. So let me bring them on board and turn it over to them. And I'm really excited about today's webinar.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Neil. Hi, everyone. It's Selena Shands. And, Neil, that was just such a great setup as part of what we're doing for the Educate and Elevate campaign, because the campaign, as you all know, is a proactive storytelling campaign to let key influencers know about all the great work that you all are doing out there and the relevancy of adult education. So when we look at the employer market, for sure, it is a very important target audience because legislators in particular want to know how adult programs are supporting business and industry and creating economic impact. So this is really an important a topic for today, and I'm just so thrilled that Business U is on board to help us dive into that topic in ways that you might not have thought about before as an adult educator. So today, just a little bit about Business U. Business U is a national organization, institutionally accredited, that works within workforce education and economic development with the goal of helping those organizations engage business to create more opportunities for job seekers and students. So there are three ways they do that: strategy, technology, and professional development. I'm one of the co-founders, and I'm joined here by Dr. Christine Bosworth, who I'll talk in just a second. But I did want to mention Business U has been celebrating their 2017 Innovator of the Year Award from its accrediting organization, IACET, and that was for learner engagement. So very proud about that award. Previous IACET winners include NASA and Westinghouse, to name a few. So it's kind of a big deal, and Business U has been celebrating. Right, Dr. B?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I need to hide the champagne?
You do. Absolutely. And I know you are super excited about this topic today, aren't you?
I sure am. I'm ready to get started.
Okay, fantastic. So let's look at the webinar topics that we're going to tackle today. And we've got some polls set up for you. And as Veronica said earlier, make sure you put your comments in the chat box, and we'll get to them as we roll through. So this webinar is all about bringing together two cultures, our world in education and the world of business. And so to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the key findings from our National Business Engagement Study, see if you all have similar pain points there in engaging business. Then we'll get into understanding the value of strategic long-term transformational partnerships. And that certainly is a word that's thrown around a lot. I'm talking about transformational. We'll get into those definitions and how to expand adult learner opportunities. And then Dr. B is going to really take you through a whole section on applying different lenses when you're working with business and industry. Also, too, I should mention, down in the resource section, you've got the PowerPoint that you can download, but we've also provided you a business engagement self-assessment as part of your toolkit, and we'll get into how we're going to be using that today. Dr. B, anything else on this to set the stage?
Well, I think a couple things, and I love what Neil said. It's not something that we always do in adult education, and so we just need to keep an open mind for a few of these things because we are bringing two cultures together. But whether employer contributions results in the development of workplace relevant curriculum as you have, or career awareness activities, or work-based learning opportunities, or placements, or in-kind support for resources or equipment, employer engagement is essential. So, employers can help us ensure that these programs that we have, are responsive to the needs of the local industries, especially if you're working with employers in specific sectors. While really at the end of the day, it provides, adult learners the relevant workplace context, as you all know, to help build those foundational skills. especially if there is a career pathway attached. But again, as educators, and I consider myself, on the educated piece of it, with the business piece of it, that kind of come together. When I look at this logo that we have, or this image that we have on this slide, we chose it because it's truly what we do at Business U. But, at the end of the day, we really need to be prepared for those challenges of bringing these two cultures together. It's not easy. And so to help achieve, and for us to achieve, I'd like to say, these common goals, we need to have the understanding from the employer perspective. That's the key to engagement. It's not understanding the language of business. It's really looking at it from their perspective. And I think Selena did a good job setting us up so we can have that conversation about how do we do the work that we do, but from the employer's perspective, which at the end of the day, we will get to those expanded opportunities for our adult learners.
Absolutely. Well said, Dr. B. So, Veronica, can you pull up the first poll for us here? And let's pick the audience's brain just a bit. And you can check as many of these boxes as you like. But when we say engaging employers, what are your primary motivators? Just take a look at the list and sort of give us a sense of why you want to engage employers. And then we'll get sort of into the sticking points as well, which leads us into the national study.
Well, for sure. And while they're doing that, I'd like for us to talk a little bit about that. Sometimes we are motivated, right? We are motivated. We're doers as adult educators. We get things done. But there are barriers that stand in our way. And sometimes it's because we don't even know specifically when it comes to our topic today, right, engaging employers, engaging businesses. We don't know how to go about it, and we don't realize that it's maybe part of, and no one's told us that it's part of our role, or it's now a new role that we have to take on with not having any support behind that. And so that's a really big thing. And everything that we're going to say today, keep in mind it applies to partnerships with your partners, be it at your with your regional teams. All this relationship building that we're talking about, everything that's involved here applies to your partnerships as well, and coordinating efforts. Sometimes we don't go about it successfully because we, again, don't realize it's part of our role. Right. So what do we see here? What's coming up?
Well, it's interesting. We did have two boxes of I don't currently work with employers or will do so in the future. So everybody on the call does work with employers, so that's a good start. And most of them, it looks like, if you can take a look at this, is primarily work-based learning opportunities, jobs, and supporting career pathways. About 28% saying helping to grow within our region, and I'm sorry, we just got about 7% that say I do not currently work with employers. So hopefully you'll see by the end of the webinar the whole reasons behind working with employers, because it really does expand our opportunities for job seekers and students as well. So Veronica, if you could bring up the next poll, and then Dr. B can continue that conversation there, and just look at the next poll is really, again, checking all that you apply as what are the key sticking points. If that's how you want to engage business, then what gets in your way of getting them to engage with you?
Well, as they're doing that, Selena, I think from what we saw in the last slide, about 80% and 70% all had to do with some form of trying to get their students somewhere, be it with a work-based learning opportunity or other opportunity. All that takes into consideration you need employer engagement, right? To be successful, we need that. We need to connect. I mean, that was a very high percentage, and we knew that it would be that high, but now where's the support for that? Okay, they've been tasked to do that work. Now, how do we get to that end goal? So as we have here, we see, oh, this is interesting. They don't have time. Here we go.
And they don't see the value. So those are two big ones that we see, and we've got a few pinging in now. They're not interested in our work. And there's certainly reasons behind that. When you think about interacting with an adult learner versus an employer, they are two different, quote-unquote, animals, two different target audiences, if you will, that require different approaches. And so we can go ahead and close that poll out, because it looks like most of them are saying time and value interested in the work. And I guess this slide, we really want to talk about, that you're not alone. We at Business U ran in 2016, we hosted a community of practice, and in that community practice we would, it was with educators, workforce development, economic development, all the organizations that interface with employers, and we ran webinars every month. There were about 500 members, and we surveyed them as part of this to say, what are your sticking points? And we started seeing trends evolve and said, wonder if this is the case nationally. And so sure enough, we put together a survey instrument online, and we asked different target audiences, be it education, workforce development, economic development, and even other business-facing organizations like small business development centers, chambers. What are the sticking points and perceptions? And we ran the preliminary findings in, I think it was February. We ran it for a national conference. And so what we did for this webinar is we sort of segmented it out for the top issues in one-to-one business engagement, and then also one-to-many, like in sector strategies and career pathways. So here are the top three, Dr. B.
Right, and this is very interesting because they tend to be, they might, be, the order might be a little bit different, but it's exactly what has come out for workforce development, economic development, chambers. They pretty much are coming up with the same stuff. And this employer time commitment, that is, as we just saw in the last poll, one of the major items. That is an issue, and that has to do with the value, which we will definitely talk about today. How do we create value? We tend to do that by looking at it from the supply side, which we'll talk about, versus demand side. That's how we communicate value. So really, businesses do not see value in that time commitment. As business owners, Selena and I have combined over 5 decades of being in businesses or running at C-level levels of organizations, and this was always an issue. Unless you can show us the value, why are we going to spend our time, right? Just like in education, in the public sector, time is limited. So I just want to note that we are not different in the education market. This mirrors all the other verticals that we have measured as well.
Absolutely.
And you are not alone.
Yeah, you're not alone. And also, don't shoot the messenger, because we're giving you the business lens during this. And so you'll see as we move through this today, you all are very passionate about your adult learners. You cannot expect a business to be just as passionate as you are, because as you'll see, they have many things that they are working towards. But that's a big one. If there's an employer time commitment, then they are not seeing certainly the value. And then these are the top challenges with sector strategies, if you will, career-based career pathways. And it's really a lot of the same thing that you saw on the previous slide: difficulty working with partners to connect, or partner coordination, because certainly sector strategies and career pathways take a lot of different players at the table. No business engagement outreach plan with defined goals and objectives. So that will also have an employer say, well, why am I at the table then? Why are you asking me to come to a meeting if they're not clearly defined goals and objectives? What needle am I trying to move as being part? And I know, Dr. B, you really feel that because you served on the Los Angeles County Workforce Development Board, and you always wanted to make a difference, right?
Well, it's very hard, yes. It's hard with the coordination because we tend to talk a lot about when we're the practitioner, come in and talk about policy and not strategy. So this is, when you look at these challenges, it's more than sector strategies. It's about professional development that has been a challenge. These are the top 4 that had to do with the education market as to, what is challenging us to get to that next step. And these were the ones, and I think everybody on this call can relate to that. And we're going to talk to you about how to overcome some of those challenges. We don't need to read this slide out to you. But one of the main things you can do right now, right, as an action, is rather than starting partnerships, especially as that being one of the really biggest issues from scratch, reach out, and I'm sure a lot of you are already doing this, in a coordinated way to employers. Reach out already with the people in your workforce development world, the ones that work on your boards, the ones that work in your American Job Centers. They already have those relationships established. If you don't have to start from scratch. You never have to start from scratch. People are already doing that work, and that's where the partnerships come in, even if you're just going in to learn, right, before you can even know what you can contribute. So dive right in, but already dive in with people that have established these relationships. It'll be much easier for you.
Right. So the last two slides really summarize what the national research is showing, and again, you echoed that in your polls as well. So now we want to get into how do we overcome these challenges. And at Business U, we teach about how to engage businesses by looking at different lenses. This is why this is a crazy slide here with all these different lenses, and there are certainly a lot of them.
Well, there are, and that's why I know it is a crazy slide, but I think it's one of our favorites because we call these lenses perspectives on how we view our business engagement work at Business U. We have to use different lenses, no matter if we are looking at the various elements of business engagement, be it, data, partner coordination, strategy, building those strategies, developing our outreach efforts, how do we go about our tactics, how are they going to be implemented? We got to know which lens are we looking through. So let's start with the supply and demand lens. Supply is, in this case, we'll look at the student and the job seeker. When we look at it from their perspective and we communicate that perspective to the employers, and remember, as Selena said, don't shoot the messenger. It's not that the employer is heartless. It is that that is not a value from that perspective. We need to know what can the students and those job seekers that you're working with, from the perspective of the employer, how will they bring value? And that's learning how to communicate that. The demand side, which is always the hat we have on. If you keep that demand side hat on, that perspective of the employer, on all the work that you do, at the end of the day, your job seekers and students, the supply side, will really benefit. It's not an easy thing to do. It takes practice. Even when you look at data, when you look at labor market information, when you look at curriculum, anything that you look at, you've got to have a demand side lens on, because it's not about learning the language of business. Everybody talks about that, learn the language of business. It's not that. It's learning how do we communicate the items, the elements that are of value to businesses with the work that we do. That's the language of business. It's not a whole vocabulary. It's just a kind of a shift in the way we think. And we know that, in just Psych 101, right, before we can change our behavior, meaning how we act towards business and how business acts towards us, we must first shift the thinking, the perception. That has to happen first before the behavior can change, right? So that's one way of looking at it. And what helps that is not looking at your business customers or potential customers as employers. We must look at them as businesses. And you'll see that an employer is just one of the things that they do. Businesses have many other things that they do, and it allows us to understand them in a different way. And that's where partnerships come in. We're also going to talk about strategies and tactics, but I'm going to take a breath right here and ask Selena if you wanted to add something here.
Sure. So if we could just back up just a moment and go to supply and demand and just kind of give a quick example, Dr. B. For example, like many of you want work-based learning opportunities. You want to engage employers for them. So let's just say you're looking to do a job shadow, and engage an employer in a job shadow. That's one example. When communicating that to a business, if you're looking from a supply side lens, you may come and say, well, the student that I'm working with, they really need experience in a business. That's not a benefit. That's a benefit for the student, but not a benefit for the business. And so the benefit for the business would be completely different. It would be, you have exposure to an up-and-coming pipeline of workers that will be your next generation of workers or something like that. So just something, I was trying to give them some example between supply and demand, Dr. B.
Well, that's great, and I think when we get to the value propositions, we'll be able to drive that home, and you're going to see everything that we're talking about in this kind of introduction, how it kind of goes together, and you'll be hearing us today talk about kind of the same terminology, so you can make those connection points, and we want to do a shout out to John Warner we see here, and he's talking about joint advisory.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Great example there. So another lens, and we're only going to go through a couple more, another lens is strategies and tactics. Again, you know, in education, we are such doers, just like in the workforce world. We are such doers. We go out there, we've already figured it out, we're going to go do, and we're going to get it done, right? But the thing is, many of us, we don't have strategy that supports that because we kind of think, well, I don't have time to build the strategy about it. But remember, a strategy is not a document. A strategy are the choices that you make. A strategy are the what and the why. Why are you doing this and for what purpose? Why, right? Why am I doing this and for what purpose? The how is a tactics. We tend to focus on the how. We tend to think that's what we have the most control of and how to go about doing it. But we can't get there because we all know that when there's a lot of strategic thinking going on, that's great. But if it doesn't have tactics attached to it, then you just got a lot of big thinking going on and nothing else is happening. And then we also have been in those meetings where it's just so tactical, all these things. We need to do this, we need to do this, we're going to have this Facebook page, we're going to have this, we need social media, we need that. But when you have tactics and no strategy to support the tactic, we don't know if we're even successful because there are no objectives attached to it. So how do we even know that our strategy is working? What is the ultimate goal? So do you see how they have to work in tandem? You got to come up first with the strategies, right? Then that's the how, that's the what and the why, and then we have the tactics that support that. And then we have our objectives to see, are we successful? Where do we need to tweak it, right? Where can we do improvements for the work that we're doing? We can only do that if we're supported by strategies. So that leads us then to the types of relationships that we have. But again, Selena, do you want to add something there before we move on to our transactional and transformational relationship building approach?
Oh, I think this is great. It really sets up the whole different types of lens they're looking at or want to look through it.
Right. So you've heard a lot, and probably in your readings, the different types. Sometimes you'll see transactional versus transformational approach to business. You know, at Business U, we've done this throughout the nation in the last few years, and we've removed that versus because we understand that both are of value. We need transactional relationships and we need transformational relationships. Where we tend to fall short is that our approach and our strategies and our tactics do not align, right? So we're behaving in a transactional way, but what's happening is all of our strategies or our tactics we're wanting to get transformational results, right? That can't happen. This is why many times things don't get off the ground or we're not achieving what we need to achieve. So here's a few examples of what is a transactional versus, if you will, a transformational type approach to engagement. The transactional one is very agenda-driven, right? It's very agenda-driven. And your agenda, people can smell it a mile away. It's about your metrics and what matters to you. And I'm talking about you, the collective you in our world of adult education. It's not at all about what the business needs, right? And so you're agenda-driven. It's immediate. It's happening right there and then. Maybe it's a need that a business has, and you're able to fill that right there and then, and it's done. And we're pretty good with follow-up, right? We'll probably maybe send a survey, but then we don't do anything with that information. It's also very conditionally motivated, these types of transactions. There's a reason why you're engaging. It's to get that immediate result, or you'll get rewarded with a metric, or it could be punitive, right? We don't sustain our funding if we don't have certain metrics met. And we don't really base any of our efforts or our transactions on data. We're not using data to help inform our decisions as to why we're even engaging with this employer, at this time. So that's transactional, right? It's short-lived, but you could have a whole bunch of these, which is fantastic in your customer list, as long as you understand that they're transactional and your behaviors and your tactics are going to match that, right? Whereas transformational, and this is where leadership has to come in and understand that transformational takes time. And I'm going to bring in right now, Selena, the relationship slide. If we can go to that relationship slide and we can go into building relationships, I think it fits in really nicely, and then we can go back to the other one. So transformational relationships takes time, right? Relationship research tells us that. They, over an extended period of time, is where trust and credibility can be developed. But for whatever reason, we know this in our personal lives because we've lived through relationships, but we tend to turn that knowledge off, that gut feeling off when it comes to professionally, when we put on our professional dress and we put on our professional hat on, right? We tend to throw that out the window. And I wish we were with you face to face, because I love to hear, you know, what you, or see your faces when I say to you, when you meet someone for the first time or the first few times, can you not smell if they have an agenda? You know, of course you can, right? We all know when someone has an agenda. And we don't really like to have those people in our personal lives, or at least if we do, we're very guarded, right? And it has to serve a purpose. But that doesn't turn off in our professional lives. And I don't know many times why we don't just use that knowledge, what it takes to build. Hello, did somebody hear that ringing? Or is it just me? Oh, I don't know where that ringing's coming from. But anyway, you can hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Terrific. So in our relationships that we're trying to build with business, it takes time, and we cannot have an agenda. We have to drop our agenda. The whole goal is not selling. The whole goal, and please take that selling thing off your table right now, and hopefully it removes pressure from you. Dealing with business is about building relationships. The most successful salespeople on earth will tell you, I'm not in the business of selling. I'm in the business of building relationships. But again, that takes time. How do you go about dropping your agenda? So, Selena, I know if I'm reading your mind right now, and
yes,
what are you thinking right now when I'm saying to you, okay, drop your agenda?
You're totally reading it, because if I'm in the audience and I'm an adult educator and I'm trying to help my adult learners, I want to get them into work-based learning. There are metrics that I may have to meet. There are things I have to do. So it makes me very nervous when I hear you say, well, this approach, then you go in and you're just building a relationship. You don't have an expectation. I do have an expectation of that employer. Otherwise, why am I wasting my time with him or her? So it makes me a little bit nervous when I always hear this.
Absolutely, and yet you know in practice it absolutely works.
Yes,
and because you have to have your customer list. You have had to look at your customers or your potential customers and say, okay, these are my transactional customers. These are my, my new relationships. These are my working relationships. And these are possibly relationships that I have that are in working order, but I can move them into strategic partnerships, right? So you have to really kind of holistically look at your customers. Not all customers fit in a type of the relationship spectrum. But the beautiful thing about relationship theory, if you will, or relationships as we practice them, and think about this in your personal life, it only takes a singular event to transform that relationship from one that was transactional to one that's transformational. Think about in your personal lives when you first met someone, be it a friend or a love interest or anyone, your neighbors. When did the relationship transform? Sometimes it kind of just stays like that same neighbor that you only, see hi to, but then the other ones that you really build a relationship with, there was a point in time that it transformed. So there's no when it's going to happen. Many times, research, when you do a literature review on this, it's very interesting. They'll say, well, I'm very surprised, when people are interviewed. I had a relationship and I did all this great work for this organization and, nothing changed. And then one day, I was just talking to them and I wasn't offering or delivering anything or they weren't requesting anything of me. And yet what happened was I noticed a shift in how they reacted to me. So that's when it happens, right? So what's the formula? The formula is increase your interaction. You must increase the level of exchange that you have with your partners or with businesses. Remember, all this applies to your partners as well. You must increase that level of interaction. Do not have any expectations, just like in your personal lives. Go for it. Find ways that you're going to increase your interaction. It could be at the local sporting events. It could be at your the children's soccer field. It could be at the chamber. It could be at any meeting. It could be, how are you going to meet these people? What we like to say at Business U is, where they go, I go. Wherever your target audience is where you go. Again, that could be what? That could be your student as part of your target audience. That could be your key, right? Your key influencers, other stakeholders, your businesses, your partners. Where they go, I go, without any expectation. I'm going to take a breath there to see if there's any questions.
Well, no, but Dr. Laura had a great point about, in order to meet your expectations, you must first have a relationship. And see, one of the challenges that we all face is that we have to really get in a space of understanding the psyche of business. And I think this slide really nails it. We tend to look at businesses as just an employer, somebody who can do a work-based learning activity, someone who can hire our students. At the end of the day, this is what keeps them up at night. Certainly staffing, labor, all of that is an important component, but we have to sort of get in their shoes, and when we approach them, understand that they have a wide range of issues that are keeping them up at night. So if we're going in and trying to have a relationship with them, and we only have our piece of the pie in workforce and education, just know that there are other things that are keeping them up, which is why we need partners at the table, partners like economic development, small business development centers, chambers, to make those referrals out to be able to solve their key and immediate issue. If I'm talking with Dr. B for the first time, and I'm an adult educator, and I'm going in and I'm telling her all about the great aspects of adult learners and how they can help her in work-based learning opportunities, et cetera, and she says to me, "That's great, Selena, but we're at full capacity right now, and I'm not hiring. I'm not interested. I don't have the time for work-based learning opportunity. What I really need is some cash flow in my business. I'm worried about some contract negotiations that are going on." I have a choice right then and there when I'm talking to Dr. B to say, okay, well, I'll touch base with you later, which is a missed opportunity, or I can refer out to one of my partners, like a small business development center, or maybe someone in economic development that this is their wheelhouse, to build credibility. And I haven't lost the contact with that employer at all, because it gives me an opportunity to what? Increase interaction. I can check back if I make a referral out to a partner. Hey, just wondering, how that challenge is going for you. We had recommended that you speak with John over here, and just wondering, has he gotten back to you? And all of that, it just increases your interaction.
Right. So a couple of things there before you move on. I love what Dr. Laura said there. So let's turn that around a little bit onto what she said. In order to meet your expectations, you must have a relationship first. Absolutely. Well, let's flip that on its side, which we love to do here, and that is to meet their expectations, to meet the business's expectations first, right? That's what builds trust and credibility. So when we're talking about demand and supply, let's bring in an example now. When you look at the demand lens, when you have that demand lens on and you're looking at retention and you're looking at, let's say you have a metric or whatever your metrics might be, but this one has to do with retention, and you're saying, okay, I placed these individuals, these 4 students in a work-based learning opportunity with this one employer, and they were able to stay there for more than 90 days. Isn't that fantastic? That was great. That was the metric we needed to meet. Okay, that's the supply side of looking at things. Let's turn that around and look at the demand side. By increasing that retention, by having those 90 days, and then we'll go on into the future, right, into the long term, what did that do to the business? Right? What did it do? Well, it reduced their recruitment costs. It increased what? Productivity. What else could it possibly do? By having an increased retention rate and a decrease in attrition, what does that mean to a business? That's the language of business, right? Seeing anything that you do, any of the work that you do, how you go about it from that perspective. I wanted to bring that in before we moved on to the business cycle. Anything you want to add there?
No, it's fantastic. I love when you do the flip.
The flip is always important.
I'm actually going to bring this slide up, Dr. B, because it includes the business cycle and a little bit of segue from what we were talking about earlier. And the point here is that if you're really working to build a long-term relationship with the business and expand your reach, dropping your expectations and just solving their immediate needs, and remember about 8% of you said in the first poll, I'm here to help regional businesses grow. So it kind of flip that thinking as well and say, if my job is to build a relationship, I need to be well-versed in all of the services and assets and grants in my region of what can serve business. So what we've included in your PowerPoint is an asset map that allows you to look at your different verticals and list all of the organizations who are in workforce, education, economic development, et cetera, and the services that they have for business and industry. And I know you love this map. This is one of your favorites, Dr. B.
Well, guys, I think they're all my favorite when when you bring up something new, it just gets my brain going, and I just love it. But what's really important here is that you become, as Selena had brought up earlier, you know, if you've made initial contact with a potential business customer or employer, what you'll need, you don't want to lose that contact, right? But so you got to really know, what are your resource partners doing, because you want to be a community resource. Your whole goal is to be resourceful, so you can keep building that relationship, because trust and credibility comes from building relationships, right? It comes after things have been delivered and they can trust you. And then they will meet you at where you need to be met. That is not an issue. Right, that happens automatically. But so here's another thing you can do right away, and that is work with or identify the partners that are currently working with businesses. Now, we all know that businesses are into R&D, right? And I'm not talking about research and development here. I'm talking about replicating and duplicating, as other people say, ripping off and duplicating. That's the R&D of business, right? So why they do that is because it's cost effective, right? So just like for you guys, they don't like to reinvent the wheel. If there is a strategy, a coordinated effort that currently works, and they're working with some of your partners and they like it and they like the strategy, and like I said, it's coordinated on how it's delivered, they will work with you. They like to duplicate successful strategies, and that is across the entire, as that other slide Selena had shown, of all the things that keeps the business up at night. That duplication happens through all of it. All right, so keep that in the back of your mind. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's find a strategy that your partners here, and here's a list of partners that we have on the screen that are current or potential partners that are already working with businesses. So again, you don't have to start from scratch. So that's something you can do right now. And then look at the business. Take it one step further, and this is if you really are really serious about your engagement work and something you can bring to the table that maybe you don't have customers yet, but you want to have kind of a conversation with your partners, you're ready to meet with them about employer engagement. Here's something really novel that you can bring to them to the table, and that is understanding where is that business, and this is not hard to find. Where are they in their business cycle? Are they a startup? Are they growth? Are they unstable? Or are they downsizing? And the reason we love to have this foundational work done first, the business cycle, is so your talking points are aligned, your strategies are aligned. For example, if you are working with students, right, and you know there are some startups out there that you want to place them. Startups are great for entrepreneurship programs. If you are working with entrepreneurship programs, if you're working, let's say, with veterans, some of you are great in startup. So take a look at that for that. Now, growth, I would do something different with growth. That's great for if you're working with on-the-job training, right? Difficult to place. Individuals are great in growth organizations. And also, if you know of companies that are downsizing, right, those go straight into growth. That's called rapid reemployment. Companies that you know that are downsizing in your area and you have to be part of that retraining or upping the skills, they are great to reemploy them into the growth. Now, stable is something really interesting. What can you do with stable organizations? There is wonderful for incumbent training, and sometimes we get excited when we can, if we are working with training, if I know we have educators on the call here today, you know, that are actually doing the training programs. What's fantastic for stable is that incumbent training, but don't forget the career pathway across the life cycle of that organization. Sometimes we focus on career pathways that only have to do with entry level. We're not looking at the other rungs on the ladder. We need to do an incumbent training that also attaches to other rungs, so it opens up that entry level, and this will allow greater opportunity for our people that have difficulty, difficulty to place, barriers to employment, and many other things. How do we increase that entry point for those individuals? Well, one way of doing it is working with stable companies, put an incumbent training program in there, and attach career pathways that have multiple entry points along the career ladder. Selena, anything you want to add there?
Well, I would just say, I just think this is a great tool for all of you to go out and start doing an asset map, and then, of course, mapping those products and services, initiatives, grants that are helping businesses to their business cycle, so that when you're in a conversation with a business and they do not need anything that you have to offer in workforce development, you can still be seen as a resource with depth and breadth, because trust me, when the employer that you just spoke with does not need you, but you have solved a key issue, that person will call you back when they need workforce development, and it gives you opportunity to stay in contact with that business. Remember, this is all about relationship building.
Right, and so the next, this is great. These are, just to get you started, some partner questions we've put together for you if you're ready to build a relationship with your partners. Keep in the back of your mind what it takes to build a relationship in your personal life is going to take that same type of knowledge and understanding and patience and time that it takes with your partners and business. So here are some questions for you. We've left some blanks depending on the type of work that you're doing, because remember, it's about meeting their expectations, right? It's about what can I do for you? We like to call it enlightened self-interest. Let me help you. What are metrics that matter to you? So maybe our work, together, we can not only meet my metrics that I'm interested in, but also meet your metrics, or not just my goals, but what are your goals, right? Let's coordinate some of that, because many times it's really the same. We're just going about it, all over the place, knocking on the same doors.
Oh, that's so true.
One way. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. And my whole thing is don't forget your gut feeling about relationship building. Use that. That's really important. And then the other piece is networking. Networking, people say, oh, network. That's easier said than done when our whole lives we've been told not to talk to strangers. That doesn't get turned off, in our brains when we're an adult. Even though we can discern maybe, harm from non-harm, talking to strangers, it's still there. So we have to work on that. Networking is not an easy thing for everyone. Some people it comes naturally, and others it takes more time, and that's okay. Remember, this is not selling. It's about building a relationship, introducing yourself. Building that relationship takes time.
Right, and building that relationship with a partner is going to get you into expanding your asset map, which again expands your credibility when you're talking to a business and are able to solve issues. So these interview questions will be a really great start for you. Now, there are intended consequences, right, Dr. B, for doing all this networking?
There are. No, there are. Sometimes they're unintended. We didn't realize, we're
right?
just being a good sport. We're just being a good partner, and we're not realizing, wow, this is what is the result of that. When we're aware of it, it's more like enlightened self-interest, but sometimes we're not aware of this wonderful, I love this slide, because it really tells you that referral business. Many times we only, we get, referrals. Yes, we get referrals, and we don't pay attention as much to the referrals that we give. My gosh, that means a lot to me when I can measure how many referrals that a business that we can give to others. One, it shows the breadth and depth of our organization as a resource partner. Remember, this is not about bottom line or making money. This is about what can we offer out there, and people are turning to us and saying, okay, I'm going to call Business U because I think they might have this resource, or they can connect me, right, to be a connector. It's a really big deal, and to measure that really shows that you have this expanded reach in your community. And when you have an expanded reach, imagine the expanded reach for your opportunities for your job seekers or your students. You know, one doesn't go without the other. So your goal is how many referrals can you give out? And, you know, Celine, why don't you go over some of these fantastic statistics that you see here?
Well, the one that really pops out is the 70% one in the top right. Referral businesses close and convert 70% of the time. So if I'm going in talk to Dr. B again, I'm going into your office and meeting with you. If I'm referred by someone that the business knows and is trusted and trust that person, then more than likely that person's going to build a relationship with me. So that is a huge statistic just in our world. And 92%, that's another one of respondents trusted referrals from people they knew. Again, go back to your personal life. You look for referrals. You need, and so it doesn't change in our world when you're trying to expand your reach with new businesses.
And that's, I'd love to bring that 92% up as well. And I think this is really interesting. You know, Selena is a co-founder of Business U, and of course she has a whole marketing company. But you know what? We've never advertised at Business U, never. And the reason is because I would say over 90% of our business comes through referrals when states hire us. Mm-hmm. And so so I'm speaking from the business perspective at this point, right? So just think about that. You don't have to have a marketing company or advertise. It is through referrals. And I think a lot of you know that and are already experiencing that. But my gosh, if you can amortize this, right, it is quite a number that comes out at the end of the day. And when I mean number, I mean placements, right? I mean things that matter to our hearts, right, mm-hmm. with those job seekers and students.
Exactly, exactly. So you can see throughout the whole presentation today, we haven't brought up once, oh, I need a brochure to leave with a business, or I need a leave behind. Because a brochure doesn't build a relationship. You build the relationship. You're the one that has the power here, who can put on the different lenses, who can build an asset map, who can start expanding reach in that manner. Now, another thing we want to do and leave you with here is a really important also strategy you can execute immediately, and that's understanding the difference between a feature and a benefit. Features are just factual statements about a service being discussed or promoted, but they really don't do anything to engage your employer. So you have to stop and check and think, what's in it for me? You know, have I answered that question? Not for you, but for the business. What's in it for the business? And then when you have those message points, they should permeate everything you do, from your communication to communication one-to-one or on the web or marketing materials or anything like that. So we're going to give you a couple examples here, and then we're going to pull up the final poll just to kind of have some fun and play around with it. So in example number 1, our organization prepares individuals for work-based learning opportunities in your industry. That might be something that you tell an employer. Well, that is very true, right? It's a feature statement. It contains facts about what the organization does, but it really doesn't get into benefits. So a benefit statement, just reverse it out. It could be, our no-cost services save employers time and money in finding qualified talent. So now you've got benefits including no cost, saving time and money, all of which are resources that deeply matter for the business. Now, we're going to practice here, and then while you're practicing, Dr. B and I can have some more conversation. But Veronica, if you could pull up the final poll, and this one you're going to choose just one statement. Choose the one and only one statement that an employer would find beneficial. An internship will give students a great opportunity to experience your business. An internship is a cost-effective way to try out potential employees. An internship will help students understand more about your business, or an internship program can build the skills of a potential worker. Which one is a benefit to an employer? So Dr. B, anything else to add on features, benefits, the whole concept there while they're voting?
That is one of the most important concepts to remember. Just like when you're buying a car, if the salesperson is just talking to you about the tires and the the tires and the steering wheel, that's not going to sell you as much as possibly what it means when you save money on the gas mileage, when they speak to you at a benefit to you, right? So I love what I see here on this screen, 70% say an internship is a cost-effective way to try out potential employees. Absolutely cost-effective. Now, let's turn that one around when they say an internship program can build the skills of a potential worker. That is from the supply side lens, so let's flip that to the demand side lens. And how we can do that is, what will it mean to the business if we build the skills of a potential worker? It will do what? And that's how we have to speak. Again, the language of business. Building those skills, if you tell me, I'm going to say, well, that's great, fine, whatever. Lots of things, can build the skills of an employee. What does that really mean? At the end of the day, you got to know what that means. That increases productivity, right? If you can add any time a data point, a percentage point, some form of either a dollar sign, a percentage, some other piece of data to your benefit statement, to the benefit to the business, gosh, you've hit a home run. So just look at that one, that last one. An internship program can build the skills of a potential worker. Yes, that sounds good, but it's value. It's supply side driven. Add a few things like productive, how it will increase productivity. Have that as your talking point. I see somebody else put in here, an internship will give students a great opportunity to experience your business. Again, that's supply side driven. Giving the students, that's their benefit to them, right? It's not a benefit to the business unless you're saying, so it builds your talent pipeline because in the next 5 years we understand you're going to have an aging situation, and so we really need to bring in those students so they understand your sector, the type and how you go about doing your business, so they can be an easy transition to increase that productivity, or you don't lose productivity. And there's 25 metrics we have at Business U when it comes to discussing this type of behavior. So just reach out to us and let us know if you want that list of metrics.
Absolutely. So you can see we've given you today a couple of strategies, strategies around looking at business and industry with different lens and communication and partnerships and relationship building. Dr. B, how can this self-assessment tool help them sort of evaluate what they're currently doing with their business engagement behaviors and activities?
Well, I think sometimes, we know this, but unless we say it out loud, we're not realizing that we're doing it. So this is a great assessment we've put together that validates the work that you're doing and saying, wow, I'm on task here. This is what's being done nationally, and this is what's been proven and validated, and I'm doing it. Fantastic. And here are some things that I'm not doing, and maybe I should consider doing them, or I'm going to also use this, or I'm going to use this to help build my strategies, because I'm not doing some of this stuff, and we should be doing it, and these are the reasons why and for what reason, before we get to our tactics, right? Before we get to actually doing that work, I'm going to help have this, serve as a guide to help build our outreach, our engagement strategy. So you can use it in a multitude of ways to validate the work you're doing, to improve on the work you're doing, to tweak it, and to help build strategies and tactics for you.
And also, too, to give it to your team members, right, in team meetings to say, hey, get your thoughts on this. In a recent webinar, we learned all these different lenses, but it looks like we're applying really transactional strategies. What do you think? Are there ways that we can build more longer-term relationships? So in summary, Dr. B, we've covered a lot today. This has been normal boot camps are 8 hours. This has been an hour.
Yes, for sure. But let's just go through this back and forth and see if we can bring anything new here. It's not learning the language of business. It's articulating what employers value from their perspective. If you can start looking at anything you pick up when it has to do with employer engagement and partner engagement, if you can start changing that perspective around, you've hit a home run. Use a self-assessment. We talked about all the reasons for you to do that. Separate your customer list. Gosh, we need to know where we're going, right? So know where your customers are as far as on the relationship continuum, and it's not the goal to get them all to be a transformational, right, state. Mm-hmm. You can have some really solid 20-year going relationships with people that are basically transactional in nature, but just know that your strategies and your efforts got to match that, right? Match that relationship type, or you're going to come up short and it's going to be frustrating for you. Also, let's consider how you might build transformational relationships. Selena did such a great job creating an asset map with you guys, right, talking about how to do that with your network of partners. And at the end of the day, especially if you're trying to build a relationship, we need to develop a culture of sharing, right? That's where coordination starts from. Collaboration starts from a culture of sharing, and that takes time. But gosh, if you're going to build this map, How about sharing it when it's completed? That starts a great interaction with those partners, right? Remember, your levels of exchange with partners and businesses, it does not have to be monetary. It has to have some value to it that each person considers of value, whatever that might be. Saving time is a great value to people. Develop more than one relationship. Gosh, you could do this today, right now. Any organization that you're currently working with, go out and develop an additional relationship in there. One, it increases your interaction with that organization. And secondly, we know this about group dynamics, right? If there's only two of you in a relationship and one leaves, the relationship no longer exists. So have your relationships with the individuals, but also have the relationships with the organization itself. You know, in business, we've been on the short end of that. We've had relations with individuals, and then that individual leaves, and gosh, what happened to the contract, right? So we need to, we've had to do this just like everybody else, right? Develop relationships with organizations. Increase your levels of exchange. Anything you want to add to that, Selena? And I know I'm going too fast here because we're running out of time.
Well, I just think in summary, yeah, I mean, I really like the lenses you put on the table. If I was going to walk away from this as an adult educator and saying, trying to engage with business, I need to understand that they are more than just an employer. So I think that's one of the most critical lens you could look at and say they're not just an employer, they've got a lot going on. And the more depth and breadth you bring to the table as a connector within your community, the more value you're going to bring to that business. And if you couple that with really paying attention to how you communicate, and not just communicate the features of your program, but the benefits to the business, you're going to go into much more of a space where the business wants to continue to engage with you. And remember, if it's relationship building, we're just trying to have a next interaction with the business. That's it. That's all we're trying to do here. And what's going to happen is you're going to see your reach grow and expand. Our boot camp participants that we train across the country that have adopted this philosophy have increased their reach by 5 times in using these strategies. So really kind of take a look at that self-assessment and take it to heart and say, okay, am I really doing these things? Are there ways that I could improve? And share that with your colleagues as well. The other thing is that at Business U, we have a lot of free resources on our site, so feel free to go to business-u.net. You can sign up for our weekly updates. You can follow us on Twitter at MaximizeB2B. But one of the things that Dr. B has a great background in adult education, and I'm going to let Dr. B, if you talk about this one, because this has been your baby, and you have birthed it, this free GED prep course.
Well, I think it's a wonderful program. A lot of you are using HiSET or other programs, and that's great. This is just to augment it. It's free. It's a global program. People from all over the world use our free GED prep course. It has all the things that you would need to have someone prep for it. And if they are going to take the GED test, you know now that it's computer-based, right? So even if they're taking HiSET, it's really nice for them to practice, on the computer. So it simulates the entire environment, the test taking, the timing, et cetera. And I really love this test that our course developers put together because it also gives you an assessment at the very beginning. So there's the link for it. You have the PowerPoint. That's an active link. Hopefully you can get to it. If not, you can reach out to us at Business U, and we'll make sure our coordinator reaches back to you with whatever resource you need. And I just want to thank all of you, just on my behalf before Selena closes it out, for really all the work that you do. I came to this country not speaking English, and so it is through the work that you do with students that don't speak English that really changed my life and my brothers and sisters' life when we immigrated many years ago. So a heartfelt thank you to all of you for all this great work you do.
Yeah, you do. Your personal story is just so amazing, Dr. B, and you are really, truly the American dream, and it's due in large part to all of the type of work that you folks do on a daily basis.
That's right.
So really, really thank you, and just know that we value you and what you do, and if we have given you some kind of different lenses that may not sit well with you, just know that it's done from a place that we really want you to succeed. We really want you to engage business, and to do that, you sort of have to put yourself in their shoes. So as a reminder, our friends at SCOE, our great friends at SCOE, have set up a contact us support. If you have any questions from the webinar, feel free to get online there at that link and submit your questions. And our contact information is also at the end of the PowerPoint deck. And we're always accessible and love to chat with you all about your business engagement practices. So feel free to drop us an email or give us a call at any time. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Veronica.